What do you do when you have a goal that is going to take longer than a year? Hello, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, I'm going to give you 7 tips to staying motivated on long-term goals. Long-term goals can be anything from something that's gonna take you the whole year to 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. There are lots of times in our lives that we are going to have goals that will span multiple years. A couple of weeks ago, I posted a video all about goal timelines and saying how setting a rigid timeline on your goal can sometimes set you up for failure rather than set you up for success and keep you motivated, especially when you know that goal is going to take you multiple years to complete. Maybe it's saving up for a down payment on a house, decluttering your entire house, losing a certain amount of weight, growing a business so that you can quit your corporate job and go full-time. Whatever it is, when you have a goal that is going to last longer than a year, it can be tough to stay motivated over the course of however many years it's going to take you to achieve that goal. And today I have 7 tips for you to stay motivated through that. Tip number 1 is to celebrate smaller milestones. Again, something we did talk about in that timeline video, but what I mean here is not only set up the smaller milestones that you are going to achieve, but then celebrate them along the way. When we have a long-term goal, it can be so easy to stay focused on that finish line, on that end state, that we forget to celebrate every little step of the way. My favorite visualization of this is the time that my dad ran a half Ironman, which props to him and anybody who runs any kind of race. It's amazing to watch. So my stepmom and I got up very early that day to go cheer on my dad. And what I remember and did not realize until we got there was that we were going to move around throughout the day just as he was so that we could celebrate all of his milestones along the way. It took him 6 hours and 15 minutes to complete his half Ironman. So if you don't know what a half Ironman is, it is a swim followed by a bike, swim, I don't remember the miles for the swim and the bike, truthfully, and then it's a half marathon at the end. So we were obviously there when he kicked off and ran, and he was swimming in a lake, and so he was swimming in that lake, and we were waiting for him to come out. That's the shortest part of the whole thing. And then he came out, and we cheered him on, and we celebrated that first milestone, which was him completing the swim. And then we kind of ran with him over to his bike while he changed into his bike clothes, his bike shoes, and then he hopped on his bike. And the bike was this 2 big loop. So we literally got in our car and drove to another spot so that we could cheer him on as he went halfway around that first loop, and then we moved back, and again, like so on and so forth, so we could cheer him on multiple times during the bike. We did the same thing with the run. It was I think it was 3 loops. Now we did not move, we stayed in one spot, but we cheered him on as each loop that he completed, and then we went and met him at the finish line and obviously celebrated at the finish line. But imagine if my dad was trying to complete that Ironman and we saw him off as he got into the water and then said, all right, I'll see you in 6 hours at the finish line. And he just continued that whole process without celebrating each of those milestones. It would be a lot harder for him to keep going. Now, luckily, an Ironman has a very obvious checkpoints, right, that you're gonna celebrate at the end of the swim, multiple stops in the bike, the run, so on and so forth. For your long-term goals, these milestone check marks that you're gonna stop and celebrate at might not be as obvious. But what I encourage you to do is pick those milestones at the beginning. Pick what are those milestones that you're gonna celebrate along the way. For example, let's say you have a goal to get a new job. There's the job that you're in, you're not happy about it, and so you have this long-term goal to get a new job. That goal might take you a week, it might take you a year. So you set up these milestone checkpoints. Okay, when I finish updating my resume, when I look up 10 job listings online, when I apply to those 10 job listings, when I get my first interview, and then ultimately the finish line when you get that new job. And as you go through that process, stopping and celebrating along the way and acknowledging the progress and the milestones that you've hit. Tip number 2 is to include the long-term goals on your vision boards as well. In 2021, I did create a physical vision board, which I have a video all about that. I did it in June. Yes, I made my yearly vision board in June. But way before that, I actually made digital vision boards on my iPad. I pulled in pictures, I wrote down words and actions and things I wanted to do all on my iPad. And because it was digital and I was keeping it to myself for the time being, I included some long-term goals on there that I wasn't ready to share publicly. One of which was quitting my full-time job to work for myself. I wasn't ready to share that information with anybody yet, and more importantly, when I put it on my vision board, I didn't think it was a 2021 thing. I thought it was a 2022 or beyond goal, but I knew I wanted to start taking the actions now to start working towards that long-term goal. So I included it on my 2021 vision boards, even though I did not think it was going to happen in that year. Because by putting it there, it reminded me that it was important. It got me inspired when I would look at it. Now, ultimately, and say what you want about vision boards, it did end up happening in 2021, which is very exciting. But when I wrote it down there, that's not what I was planning on happening. So include those long-term visions, the final end state, even if it is 5 years away. If it is something that you want to start working on now and want to be reminded of now, put it on your vision board now. Tip number 3 is to pick action steps that you enjoy along the way. This is true for any goal, really. I do encourage you to pick action steps that you enjoy doing. Now, not every goal is going to have action steps that you love all of the time. I get that. But especially for long-term goals, if you are planning to get there step by step with things that you absolutely despise or don't enjoy at all, it's gonna be a long process and you are going to be way more likely to give up along that journey. And maybe that means that you're alternating between an action step that you're excited about and then an action step that you don't like as much. But by incorporating action steps that you like, you're more likely to follow through and commit to the long-term journey of finishing that. This could be a little bit tougher for, let's say, a financial goal. You're saving up to buy a down payment. All that means is that you're saving. You're not even going to see the fruits of your labor for a very long time, and it's not exciting to see that along the way. I would encourage you to throw in some little rewards. And it might seem really counterintuitive to say, okay, once I save this amount of money towards my overarching goal, then I'm gonna stop and celebrate by buying myself this. But if stopping and celebrating and buying yourself this, which is the action that you're excited about, and you're doing tip number 1, which is celebrating the milestone, that action step that you enjoy is going to give you the excitement and the momentum to keep going along the way. This can be easier for other goals besides budgeting, right? So if you have a weight loss goal, maybe it's incorporating movement that you really like, eating recipes of things that you do really enjoy eating. If it's decluttering your house, maybe an action step that you really enjoy is organizing a space once you've cleared all the clutter out. So including that as you go along, instead of decluttering and then organizing, room by room, declutter and then organize, and be able to see the before and afters and do the step that you're excited about along the way instead of waiting until the very end. Tip number 4 is to work on other goals at the same time. It can be really tough if all you're doing is working on long-term goals and you're not working on any goals that you're gonna see the results much sooner. So while you're working on these long-term goals, even if you feel like that's all you have, I would encourage you to find at least one other goal, something else that you're excited about that you can work on alongside your long-term goal that will break it up. It will give you something different to work on. It will give you something that you're going to achieve much quicker and therefore continue that momentum to work on that other goal. I know when I was working on my debt, it was really hard for me to want to work on other goals like my health and wellness, where I was investing in fitness classes, because I was like, well, but I need to be spending all that money, paying off my debt. But I know that if I just cut that part out of my life and only worked on my debt goal, I would get very bogged down and very frustrated that I wasn't also seeing progress in another area of life. It can be really demotivating to just work on one goal at a time, especially if that goal is a long-term goal. So make sure that you have other goals, at least one, that you're working on at the same time. Number 5 is to track your progress. And I mean your overall progress on the long-term goal. Some of these long-term goals especially have action steps that feel very repetitive. I was talking with a Patreon member who's at the texting tier, and she is saving up for a down payment on a house, and she's like, it feels very boring that every month on my power sheets, I write the same thing. Save this amount of money, save, track my budget, all the same action steps. It just gets boring and it feels like I'm doing the same thing over and over again. And what I encouraged her to do was create a tracker where she could see the entire goal at a glance, so that every month, even though it feels like her action steps are the same, because they probably are, she's able to see the progress that she's making on the goal overall. Now, whether you do this in a spreadsheet, somewhere digital because it's gonna carry over multiple years, or you create some sort of tracker in your planner or on a separate thing that you're shading in over time, it does not matter where you're doing it, as long as you can see the progress that you've made. That's what's important here. Instead of just focusing on what's left, you need to be able to see what you've done. Because if all you do is have a number that's like, oh, this is the amount of debt that I have left, but you don't see the big number of debt that you've already paid off, you feel like you haven't made any progress and it makes you want to give up. So have a place where you're tracking it from the beginning until the end. And if you're like, well, I've already started on it, that's okay. You can either go back and shade in all the progress or type in on a spreadsheet or a Google Doc all the progress that you've already made, or just start with where you're at. Start right with where you're at and start tracking from right now so that you can not only see how far you have to go. We're good at that. We're good at focusing on how far we have to go. I want you to also focus on how far you've come and the progress that you have made. And the best way to do that is to have some sort of tracking system. Tip number 6 is to take a break if you need to. This might also feel a little bit counterintuitive. Like, if I am working on this goal for however many years, it's gonna take me a really long time to get there, you're telling me to take a break? You're telling me to stop working on it for a set amount of time? Yes, and here's why. If you've been working on the same goal year after year after year, whether you're seeing progress or not, it's very possible that you're going to get bored. It's very possible that you are going to get frustrated, that you haven't crossed the finish line. It doesn't matter if you've made so much progress, you're 80% of the way there. If you are still not there and you've been working on it for a long time, it's normal to get frustrated and bored. So I would encourage you to just take a month off. Take a month where you don't think about that goal, where you give that goal a break and you work on all of your other goals. I'm not saying take a break from all goals. Keep up the momentum by working on the other goals. I want to clarify, when I say take a break, I don't mean work for it on a month and then take a break for a month and work on it for a month and then take a break. I mean, if you have a goal that you have been working on for a long time, for years, maybe it's time to just take a break. Take a step back, take time off, and then get back into it and get motivated and excited, because it'll have that kind of fresh new feeling. Now, if this is a goal that you just started this year in 2022, it's not time for a break yet. But let's say we get to August or September and you have made progress on this goal, but you realize, I'm not going to finish this goal by the end of 2022, and I'm likely going to have to carry that goal over in 2023. Maybe you already know you're gonna have to carry it over. Regardless, let's say we get to about August or September, maybe you take a month off, because you know you're gonna roll around and carry that goal into the next year. So take a month off, work on other things, and then pick back up with it with fresh start and fresh energy. And tip number 7 is to reevaluate your why. In last week's video, we talked a lot about finding your why and using your why to decide whether or not a goal is important for you. What I want you to do with this long-term goal, you've probably already determined this is a goal you want to work on. Otherwise, you wouldn't have started it, or you wouldn't have worked on it for as long as you have. So you're not checking in with your why to see if this goal is something that you want to do, but check in with your why just to see if or how it has changed. Because after working on a goal for a certain amount of time, your why could potentially become clearer. You might have thought at the beginning, this was my why and this is what I wanted, but then once you start doing it, you realize, oh, I really like how that feels. Okay, that's my why, because I want to feel that way. Or that's how that impacts my life. That's my new why. There are times that we think we know the why until we start taking action, and then the why becomes clearer. So as you're working on this long-term goal, set up checkpoints with yourself to reevaluate your why. Maybe you journal about it, write it in a notebook, what that why is. Maybe you have a sticky note that's always reminding you of this why, of this long-term goal. Or maybe it's just you sit and you think about it for a little bit. There is no right or wrong way to check in with your why as you're working on a long-term goal, but just something I would encourage you to do if a goal is going to take you multiple years is to just check in, make sure that why is still there, has it changed, has it evolved, and is it still at the forefront of my mind? And that's it. Those are my tips on staying motivated when you have goals that are going to take longer than a year. And know that you're not alone. It is so common for all of us to have goals that are going to take us multiple years to complete. You can do a lot in a year. You can make a lot of progress, but it's also only 12 months. And depending on what other curveballs life chooses to throw at us, there might be times that you don't complete what you want to complete by the end of the year and you have to carry it over to the next year. It doesn't mean that you failed. It just means that you need more time to complete that goal. And I hope that these tips helped give you some ideas to stay motivated on that journey. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, please click that subscribe button. I upload new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday focused on helping you achieve your goals. Thank you so much for watching. I feel so awkward. Today I am here, 4th time's a charm. I actually made wrong, and it might seem really counterintuitive. There is no right or wrong,